When a local school recently unearthed a time capsule sealed away in 1975, they expected to find the usual childhood artifacts. But when a student named Tommy unrolled his assigned envelope, he didn't find faded drawings or innocent predictions. Instead, he stared at a page completely covered, margin to margin, in dense, chaotic strings of numbers. Confused, Tommy brought the paper to his father, Lance. As a physics professor, Lance spent his career analyzing complex data systems and searching for order. He knew that true randomness is exceptionally rare. To a trained mathematical mind, an anomaly like this usually hides a deliberate underlying structure waiting to be extracted. Lance isolated a single, unbroken sequence from the top of the page, copying it onto his whiteboard, 9-11-299-6. He began dissecting the string, dividing the digits and testing for recognizable variables to see if any logic would emerge. The first segment aligned perfectly with the calendar, 911. September 11th. The remaining digits, 2,996, represented the exact verified death toll of the World Trade Center attacks. This document had been locked underground 26 years before those events occurred. The paper existed decades before the tragedy it described. Lance immediately took his date plus death toll formula and applied it to the rest of the page to decode the remaining lines. Line after line, raw digit strings converted into precise dates and casualty counts of global catastrophes. Whether an Asian earthquake or Atlantic hurricane, the math held up. The timing and human cost matched perfectly across unrelated events. A single correct sequence could be a coincidence, but matching every major event for 50 years suggests the document follows a consistent, functional logic. Desperate to find the source of the document, Lance tracked down an original teacher from that 1975 classroom. But too much time had passed. She had absolutely no memory of the specific child who submitted the paper, leaving the author's identity a complete mystery. Without the author, Lance returned to a structural flaw he had noticed during his decoding. Every successfully translated sequence had several unused digits left over at the very end. These trailing numbers didn't align with calendar systems, and the casualty counts were already fully accounted for. In cryptography, a cipher remains unsolved as long as an entirely unknown, repeating variable appears in every string. The stakes escalated rapidly when Lance reached the very last line of the 1975 document. The date it predicted was today. He spent the entire morning and afternoon glued to global news feeds, refreshing monitors and waiting for an incident to break. Yet, as the hours ticked by, the news cycle remained completely mundane. There were no breaking alerts, no sudden tragedies. Conceding defeat, Lance left his screens to pick up his son from school. Minutes later, a severe storm struck, trapping him in heavy traffic. Sitting in the rain, he wondered if a predictive streak that had held perfectly for half a century had finally broken down on its very last calculation. Trapped in the standstill, Lance glanced at his dashboard navigation. The coordinates glowing on his screen perfectly mirrored the unsolved trailing digits from the final line of the paper. The trailing digits were geographic coordinates. They provided a location. Lance was trapped. The math proved he was currently sitting completely paralyzed at the exact epicenter of the impending event.